I see you out there, sick and tired of people questioning why you're still single. But you've dumped the guy who negged you over salad dressing, the one who made his ex your problem, the woman who thought your dog was optional, and the charming mess who said he wasn't great at texting but somehow lived on his phone. You've held on to your moral fiber like your life depended on it. You eat your moral fiber every morning and put up a good fight. In this episode, we're looking at that moment when you start to wonder, am I holding the line or just holding everyone at a distance? And what's the cost of staying this picky? And what's the risk of re-examining? Yeah, let's talk about that. That sounds at all interesting? I hope you'll stick around because that's what's on the agenda. Let's start with what's true. You used to call it chemistry, and now you call it a pattern. That guy who gave you butterflies, he was usually just a red flag with decent lighting and a charming way of making you feel like you were auditioning for the role of girlfriend who won't ask too many questions. You used to mistake anxiety for attraction, drama for depth, and every once in a while, crumbs for actual connection. You thought love was supposed to feel like a roller coaster when really it was just emotional whiplash. So no, you're not too picky. You're just finally awake. You're no longer hypnotized by potential. You're looking for actual. And anyone who makes you question that wisdom isn't someone you're being unreasonable about. That's just someone you're not letting confuse you anymore. People love to say, you're never going to find someone if you expect perfection. And sure, they're right, technically. They're right about the perfection part. But most of us aren't looking for perfect. We're looking for functional. Somebody who follows through when they say they'll call and communicates like they graduated middle school. Somebody who doesn't turn every conversation into a competition or a therapy session they're not paying for. Mostly someone who doesn't treat basic kindness like it's an elective course they forgot to take in college. That's not too picky. I've been through enough to know what not to sign up for again. If you've got boundaries now that would have shocked your younger self, that's not regression, that's a resume update. And here's where it gets a little uncomfortable. And you know I'm going there. I have to go. I care. I go because I care. If nobody ever makes it past the second date, if everyone gets written off for something, his laugh is too loud, she chews with her mouth open, he uses your instead of your in texts, and now you're trying to decide if that's a typo or a lifestyle. If the only people you do feel chemistry with are emotionally unavailable or conveniently live in a different time zone, then this might not be about standards. This might be about self-protection wearing a really good disguise. Not so much, I know my worth and I'm holding out for love, and more like, I've been burned and now I eliminate everyone before they can disappoint me. You've turned dating into a very thorough screening process. You've turned into a TSA checkpoint, but forgot to let anyone on the plane. When people used to ask me how I take my coffee, I'd say, with corn and chemicals. That was how I described non-dairy creamer, the one where corn syrup was the third ingredient, and the little pink packets. I use Whole Earth now, that's green, and it has stevia and monk fruit and a few other ingredients I probably don't want to Google. I know, I'm not a good person. I'm not like somebody who drinks their coffee black. I know I'm making mistakes. I know they are better than me. I know I could do better. And I'm here to remind you that you too, you can do better also. If you're just stopping by here randomly whenever you happen to see my smiling face, probably pointing at something you can't even read without your cheater glasses, well, maybe it's time to stop winging it. You can't unknow it, right? Well, might as well subscribe and call it growth. All right, now we can head back to the episode. Thank you for subscribing. I appreciate it. You can't grow anything in a locked garden, and you can't build anything with someone you won't let close enough to see clearly. There's a difference between being selective and being shut down. You know that. There's a difference between filtering out genuinely bad fits and keeping the filter so darn tight that nothing and nobody gets through. If everyone's disqualified before they even have a chance to show up as themselves, then you're not curating anymore. You're isolating. And isolation feels safe until it starts to feel lonely. So here's what you need to figure out. Are your standards still based in truth, or are they built on old wounds that never quite healed right? Because there's a difference between I deserve better than this and I'm terrified of getting hurt again. One is wisdom and the other is fear with a really convincing LinkedIn profile. If you've been shrinking yourself to fit into someone else's version of love, then yes, keep that bar exactly where it is. But if you've been using standards as a way to avoid the vulnerability of actually connecting with someone, maybe it's time to check whether you're protecting yourself or just avoiding the whole messy business of letting somebody get to know you. And here's the cost of keeping your standards exactly where they are. They may be just right. You might save yourself from heartbreak, disappointment, and having to compromise on anything that matters to you. You'll also save yourself from Sunday morning coffee in bed with someone who thinks your terrible bedhead is endearing. Save yourself from having someone to call when your day goes sideways and you need to complain about your coworkers. And save yourself from the messy, imperfect, irritating joy of building a life with another flawed human who thinks you're worth putting up with anyway. The question is, which risk feels bigger? Being disappointed by somebody real or being protected by someone imaginary? You might even save yourself from having to share your fries, which, to be fair, is like totally legitimate. And here's the cost of reconsidering. You might let somebody in who ends up disappointing you, who doesn't meet every criteria on your carefully created list. Somebody who pronounces nuclear as nuclear, which is wrong, no matter what president says it incorrectly. Somebody who thinks your favorite movie is overrated and puts ketchup on eggs like a sociopath. And yet somehow they get you, and you don't hate it. You might also discover that the person who checks 80%, 70% of your boxes, but makes you laugh until your tummy hurts, is actually a better match than the theoretical person who checks 100%. Because there's no such thing. They don't exist. 100%. Give up on it. It's about finding someone whose imperfections don't make you want to change your phone number and move to a different state. At the end of the day, your standards reflect how you feel about yourself and what you believe you deserve. If you've done the work on your peace, your boundaries, your life, then the people you date should match that energy. And yeah, that might mean walking away more often than you stay, depending on who you're meeting, right? But if your standards have become a way to avoid the vulnerability of actually connecting with somebody, then you're not serving you anymore. You're just keeping yourself safe in a very small, very lonely box. So what's the move? Only you know whether you're holding the line or holding everyone at arm's length. But maybe the question isn't whether your standards are too high. Maybe it's whether they're still serving the person you're becoming or just protecting the person that you used to be. I'd say whatever you choose, keep the bar exactly where it is or move it an inch in either direction. Let it be on purpose, though, not out of fear, not out of pride, and definitely not because somebody else is telling you how to live your life. I don't know if you're too picky, but I know you're not settling. You're just trying to figure out the difference between standards and walls, and that's exactly what you should be doing. I hope you found that interesting or helpful. If you did, you might want to check out this episode here. But hey, before you go, please give my little mama the thumbs up that she's been kindly requesting. She's been refreshing her stats like a teenager checking Instagram, and honestly, her dedication to the algorithm is both admirable and slightly concerning. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel because somebody needs to remind you that there's a difference between knowing your worth and building walls around it. And apparently, I'm that someone, for better or worse. Thanks for hanging out with me today, and until next time, have a good one.